All right. All right, good afternoon. Welcome to TOROCast. Hard Mode, Episode 5. This is the Strat Pack because we're witty. Um, Thank you for joining us.
Why we
This
go
is
that
our
far?
off-week show, and we're actually going to get into the real format we want to run with the show this week, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. First, I want to introduce our hosts. To my left, across the pond, I have Michael. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you.
Just all right?
Yeah, it's late. I'm tired. I'm getting old.
It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We've addressed already that time zones mean nothing and everything.
Listen, time zones are all based off British time. That's how it works. GMT is 0, and then every other time zone goes off GMT. So technically, we're the center of the world. So technically, my time is correct, and you're just wrong.
That's snappy.
That was the most self-important load of nonsense I've ever heard.
It's fact, actually. Check it out. YouTube, Google it.
Don't bother me with facts. All right.
Fact.
Next we have May back with us again, our resident girl.
Yeah. Always. I'm always the resident girl when you think of a new intro.
Well, if we're going on fact, we have Mike, who's the Brit, May, who's the girl. What else are we going with?
The
We should do
professional.
alliteration then. It should be the Brit, the boobs, and the brains.
I can't.
And the
call
Brian.
How misogynistic.
And we're also we're introducing a new voice to the show. We have Brian with us. Brian, why don't you take a minute and introduce yourself and tell us who you are and why you're here?
why,
That was
why I'm
deep.
here?
That's a heavy question.
Yeah, the paycheck. That's it. No, I'm Brian. Some know me on Twitter as Azros. Been in the SWTOR fansite community since pre-launch. I was at a previous competitor site before. Took some time off, and now I'm back here. Excited to blather on about this sort of stuff with you guys.
Yeah, I have to say we're happy to have you on. I know that you bring another shade of the spectrum of opinions to the table, and it'll be nice to have that.
Which I'm not the boobs of the show.
Are you sure? I mean, I've never seen you in real life. You could be.
Well,
a
It could be. We could
Could
compare.
have.
See
Yeah.
who wins.
We'll talk about that later.
I can't help but make a producer moment here. You're all boobs. Every one of you.
Thank you. So let's do the quick roundtable. Whatever everybody's been up to this week. I'll start with myself because I'm self-important. Finally got my guild together to start progressing in hard mode Dread Fortress. We haven't touched Palace yet. Well, that's not true. We did touch Palace just long enough to find out that we didn't want to do Palace because the first boss overwhelmed us with ads, and we said, you know what, we're not going to do this yet. So we went back into Fortress, and we dropped the first boss. We dropped the second boss, which was akin to banging our head against a wall, and we'll talk about that a little later. And we dropped the third boss, and we've had a couple of pulls on the fourth, but we haven't made a whole lot of progress with him yet. But overall, project a productive raid week for us. It was more progress than we made last week, so hopefully that will continue. We're going to try to pull it again before the reset and see how far we get. So, May, what have you been up to this week?
I've been running Dread Fortress and Dread Palace with my guild. We got 2 groups through Dread Fortress. So it's that second week where we're bringing everybody in who hasn't seen all the fights before and needs to see fights so that we can start multiple groups running and farming that content to get the gear for nightmare runs.
So did anybody really care about the rankings for the progression on this round?
No.
And did you guys, or is it just kind of, it's hard mode, everybody's going in and gearing, and then when eventually they release Nightmare, all you progression people will go and chomp at the bit again?
You people.
Yeah. We didn't treat it like progression is not necessarily, and definitely not the same as Nightmare progression. I know a couple other guilds didn't treat it as progression also.
Mm-hmm.
The first guild to clear was an EU guild. 'Cause with hard mode, it's a matter of hours, not a matter of days. So that first people to go in thing does matter when it comes to that. So
Yeah, I remember when I saw the the tracking thread on the forums, it was literally getting updated every 40 minutes. A boss was dropped and something was getting updated, so I wasn't surprised about that. Mike, what have you been up to this week?
I have been grinding Oricon dailies.
That sounds like the same thing you did last week.
I've just been doing it over and over. It's been quite soul destroying, actually.
What's your rep?
bec-
What rep are you?
Oh, it's so slow. I don't know. I think I'm outsider or a bit above newcomer. I can't remember. I haven't done it. But
You've got to be higher than that.
I'm not, probably am. I can't remember. I don't check. I don't check until it's maxed.
I'm hero at the moment.
Are you hero already? I'm not hero.
I'm hero, and I have enough comp stack to hit champion on Tuesday.
The problem is though, I flop out halfway through the actual dailies, like every day. I like do half and I go, oh, I can't bother anymore.
If you're handy with math, it takes if you have the maximum guild reputation bonus, and you're a subscriber, it takes 5.1 weeks with maximum overcapping on reputation trophies to hit legend. So 6 weeks is what it will take.
It'll probably take me about 5 months.
It's not that bad.
The way I'm going now. The problem is though, I tend to do it solo some of the time, and that is just tears of frustration because I find Oricon to be definitely a place to do with other people and not by yourself because you just die a lot.
There's something to be said for that, especially going in as a DPS.
Yeah.
I mean, I can get them down fast enough, but I drop as fast as they do. It's awful.
Yeah, I've found that going in either on my mercenary or my sentinel was not as much fun as going in on my tank or my healer. Soloing on my tank and healer is like, I can do it with my eyes closed, but if I go in as a DPS, I really have to pay attention and be on my game.
Yeah, it's no fun doing it solo, I have to say.
Has there been a lot of world PvP out there?
I've been ganked a couple times.
We have
Not
people
on my
with
server.
Scare Bear already, but they've been grinding it the entire since Oricon dropped, basically.
Yeah.
My open world PvP experience on Oricon has been, I got flagged on my mercenary because somebody ran through my death from above. I was then killed 4-on-1 by a Republic team, which it happens. It's not really the end of the world. So I rezzed and went back about my business, and they came and they ganked me again. And the second time I was a little agitated, but I did hit my heroic moment, and I took 2 of them down with me, which made me feel good.
There you go.
So then I went into the instance that I was in. Went into a cave and I killed something, and I come back out of the cave and I see one of the commandos that was in their team standing outside the entrance. And of course I can see him right through the instance opening. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, he's going down. He's all alone. This is a 1-on-1. He's going down. I came out of that instance, both guns blazing, tore him down in about 5 seconds. I did an emote/wave to him, and I ran away. And I felt good about myself.
Oh, I was
Sure.
waiting for you to be like, and then 10 stealthers came out and took me apart.
No, the story had a happy ending. Although, if 10 stealthers came out and murdered me, that would have been a happy ending for some people, just not me.
Sure.
My wife is listening, probably would have been a happy ending for her. So, Brian, what have you been up to this week? Before we get too terribly off topic.
I'm feeling a little weak after you guys because we working through Dread Fortress and Dread Palace 2 but on story mode, and we cleared both for the first time this past week. So, despite many bugs in Dread Palace, I mean, many bugs. So
Many bugs.
yeah, other than that, just doing dailies and stuff and trying to get our ops team in a good groove so that we can start working on the HMs.
I wouldn't honestly, and we'll talk about this when we get into our meat part of the show, I wouldn't feel too terribly small about not getting into the hard modes already, because it's been my experience that story mode of the new ops is very difficult in comparison to story mode of the last op tiers.
Yeah, well, and the bugs don't help, especially like Draxus.
Yeah.
Yeah, and-
That where his dot hits for twice as much as it should.
yeah, well, twice as much as hard mode too. Some people said math-wise. So there's the Mass Affliction one, and there's the Guardian Affliction one, which are both broken.
Yeah,
But-
it's there's the bugs don't help it, but even bugs aside, just the mechanics required and the coordination required and the general, everything that has to do with the ops themselves, story mode is considerably harder in my opinion than story mode of Scum and Villainy or Terror from Beyond.
Yeah.
We'll get into that very shortly. Next, I'm gonna hit the contact information. if you're listening to the show, you probably already know how to get us, but I'm going to tell you how to get us anyway. You can go to TOROcast.com to rate and comment. Hate and subscribe on iTunes, torocast.com/feed. If you don't use iTunes, you can email us at torocast@torocast.com. We are at Torocast on Twitter. We are also part of the Twonkhammer family of podcasts at twonkhammer.com. You can check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/twonkhammerent. Quick Twonkhammer plug, actually. There's Twonkhammer has a lot of different things going on, and they have a lot of different podcasts, and a lot of good web resources and editorials, and the Twonkhammer family in general has been growing and expanding, and it is that if you're a video gamer, whether it's Star Wars or something other than, if you're a video gamer in general, Twonkhammer is a really good resource to get some interesting insights. So just a little plug there. Speaking of plugs, we are sponsored by Audible. If you would like to help support the show, go to twonkhammer.com/audible. You can sign up for free. You don't have to continue to pay if you don't want to, but you do get a free book that you can keep forever. And I know that we've harped many times on the show about how nice audiobooks are, especially while driving around. And so head on over to twonkhammer.com/audible. It helps out the show, and you'll get a free book in the meantime. Even though we're doing a shortened show, I still want to hit a couple things that came out in the news this week. There were one thing in particular, really, that I'd like to hit, and I think everybody knows exactly what it is, and that is the super secret space project isn't super secret anymore.
What kind of it is? Because
Well, no.
they still haven't really told us anything about it.
Well, they've given us more information than they've ever given us before. Which is because what they gave us before was, hey guys, we're working on the super secret space project. We promise it's awesome, right? But then we never heard anything else about it. And then a couple of weeks ago, there was a little teaser video that came out, and it really didn't show us very much. And then all of a sudden, it was actually on, what day was it this week? It was Thursday, I think. It was on the 8th. BioWare announced that the super secret space project is actually going to be called Galactic Starfighter, and it's going to be the next digital expansion.
Hooray!
Now, Mike, I want to ask you something.
No.
What was the number one thing you took away from the news on this digital expansion?
What was the number one thing?
Number one thing.
I don't know. Where do I begin? I could rant for hours.
You're gonna rant?
Yeah. I
Well,
mean,
go ahead and
right,
go ahead
okay.
and rant. I mean, let's
All
not
right.
do it for hours, but rant
Right.
away.
here's the thing. I'm really excited about it. I like what they've said so far, that it's going to be 12 versus 12, space PvP, not on rails. There's going to be a variety of ships. There's you can customize your ships and stuff. I really like that. I don't like the name Galactic Starfighter. Is just terrible. That is just not. That is not a good name at all. And
I'm actually wondering, is it going to be Galactic Starfighter or is it going to be Conflict Rising? Because Conflict Rising is the name of the trailer.
no, it's Galactic Starfighter.
Yeah, all their
Right.
branding stuff. Like the
And here's
Because
my
Conflict
main
Rising
problem.
sounds better.
Yeah, but here's my main problem with it. Okay, they've announced it as the next digital expansion, so it's the next expansion. Now, is space PvP an expansion?
Well, that raises another question, and it's one that I brought up in a comment on our. It's one I brought up in a comment on our website. Is this expansion just Galactic Starfighter?
Well, I mean, it's fact. I've actually, because I saw some forums and some Eric Musco basically said that there's going to be no PvE content in the expansion as of
They
yet.
did confirm that.
Yeah. So they've
I
confirmed
haven't
that. So
seen
it's just going to be the PvP.
Well,
Now,
then that brings up the question that I raised.
Yeah, to me I understand that yes, it's PvP and you're going to get a lot of use out of it because you're going to be doing it over and over again, and it'll no doubt be fun to do. But at the same time, does that amount of content qualify it to be named an expansion? Because I mean, I know that this isn't World of Warcraft, but an expansion. I played World of Warcraft for a lot of years. An expansion to me is a lot bigger than some space PvP.
Well,
This also doesn't cost a dime, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, how much does it cost?
Well, fair enough, but
It's
game
free.
update, yeah.
So
But
is it free because of the fact that they recognize that there really isn't enough content to call it an expansion? I mean, Rise of the Hutt Cartel had a lot of stuff in it, and then I believe that Rise of the Hutt Cartel was worth the money that we all spent on it.
yeah, but it wasn't a lot of money though.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of money. It was $10 or
And
$20.
that's gone free now because that's the way they're going to go with the expansions because of the free to play model, and they're getting really good press out of doing it.
So then my question becomes then, should this just be a content patch?
Yeah,
I
They
have a
shouldn't,
theory
I
on
would
they
that.
shouldn't be
prefer
calling it
them-
an expansion.
I would have preferred it to be a game update.
Well, I have
Now-
a theory on that, though.
Do you think... Now, that brings me to an interesting a question that I'd had, and I really hope that the answer to this is what I'm hoping it is. But as you recall, a couple of weeks ago, they put the class rep system on hiatus. And they said the major reason for doing that was that they've had all these questions and answers, and that they felt it was kind of redundant to go and have more questions and answers without addressing in the game the questions and answers from all the rep cycles they'd gone through. And that they specifically said that there was going to be a lot of class balancing in patch 2.5. So I wonder, where does patch 2.5 fall with respect to Galactic Starfighter digital expansion? Because if you look at the time frame, Galactic Starfighter goes early access for subscribers on December 3rd. It goes live for everybody else. I think it was January 14th.
Yeah, it's 8 weeks after
It's
2.4.
8 weeks. 8
Yeah,
weeks
no,
after
it
2.
goes-
Point,
It
it's
goes
8 weeks
January
and then
is
another 6
preferred,
weeks.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
So-
February is free to play.
So we're looking at 12 weeks between 2.4 going live and January 14th when early access for subscribers.
But that's
and-
not to say
and
that there
prefer-
won't
and
be
preferred
anything
gets to
between,
it.
though.
I'm just hoping that whatever this deal is with 2.5 and the class balance happens, I don't know, before the end of the year. I really, really don't want to wait that long for class balancing, but I also don't want them to say, try to push out too much all at once and end up having, horrifically bugged releases on, either the class balance or the digital expansion, because neither one of that would be good.
Well, I have a theory on how this whole thing works out. Because at first I thought, well, it's cool, it's an expansion, but if you look at the way that they're marketing it, it sounds like it's just a little bigger. Well, it's not even that much bigger than a normal content patch. It just has a brand new game system in it. But the way that they're marketing it is that it's an expansion because subscribers get all these benefits. They get early access. Depending if you're a sub or if you're preferred, you'll get different ships, you'll get different titles and stuff like that. I think this is probably originally going to be a content patch. I think it's actually going to be 2.5, but they're treating it as an expansion so they can say, well, subs are still getting a cool benefit, because the last cool benefit we got was 500 cartel coins,
Yeah.
and that kind of blew back in their face. So to me, it seems like it's really going to be 2.5 rather than a 3.0 like most expansions are, and we'll probably see those class balance changes rolled up into that.
Right, but do we think, I think that the whole Galactic Starfighter thing is a complete bid for them to get different people playing this game than the people that are already playing it.
But it's tied to the ground game. You can't, as far as I know, you're gonna have to still, if you look at war zones and stuff, people can't do any war zones if you're not level 10, so they're still gonna have to come in and play the actual other part of the game. I could be wrong, but
Well, I mean, but is that a terrible thing? Is it a terrible thing that say the way they do it? And I mean, obviously, we don't have any other information other than what they've told us, so it's just all speculation. But is it such a terrible thing if the game is, you get in at level 1 and you play to level 10, and because 1 to 10 is not that difficult on a starter planet, even not knowing anything about the game at all, you get in as a complete noob, you can get to level 10 within the space of, what would you say, maybe 2 hours?
Yeah, something like that.
If I went to do it right now, I could probably do it in about 45 minutes. But if you get in and 1 to 10, you can do it in about 2 hours, and that 2 hours gives you a general introduction to the game and a general introduction to the lore and your story and the planets and dealing with, what are guilds and and it's just kind of a general introduction to the game. And then at level 10, when you get off your starter planet and you head to fleet, you can do, you can do ground-based PvP, you can do PvE ship content, you can do PvP ship content, you can start to run flashpoints, or you can continue going through on your your class story on the ground and run through. I think I understand what you're saying, that it really does open up the game potentially to a different audience, but I don't think it's going to be intended to be a, oh, I'm going to go sign up for Star Wars: The Old Republic because I want to do ship content. I think it's going to be an aspect of it. I really think if they were doing it that way, and maybe there is going to be PvE ship content. I know maybe not now. They haven't told us anything about it, but maybe later. I think without that, you can't really make the justification that it's going for an entire separate audience, because I have to imagine the kind of audience who goes, I really love flight simulators and space combat. They're not PvP people.
I'll tell you who is excited about this actually is a lot of ex SWG players.
Well, they had a pretty good space combat system.
Yeah, and it sounds very similar to what they had.
Yeah, I'd never played it, so I don't know for sure, but I know they had a pretty good space combat system.
I saw somebody at BioWare though say that when someone asked them if there was going to be PvE, space PvE included, and they said, "Wait, why? You already have space PvE."
Well, where was that?
Yeah. Oh, where was it?
Yeah.
I saw it on a Facebook post by one of the people.
I hope that's not the case, because I know that I've always been very turned off to the PvE space content because it's on rails and it's just not fun.
Yeah.
And if they were to take, because I mean, obviously, the Galactic Starfighter is definitely off the rails. I would love to see them do something, even if it's a future patch, do something where there is, free flight PvE based space.
But I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, if anything, it's a base to start off.
It is.
It's a new system. They can, kind of expand however they want to on it.
All that said, I'm really looking forward to it hitting the PTS because I want to get my hands on it. And I'm assuming if it's going out December 3rd, it's probably going to hit the PTS. What do you say? The beginning of November, based on past history.
I would hope so.
And that usually tends to be how they do these things. You get about a month on you get about a month beforehand. It's on the PTS for like 2 weeks, and they pull it down, do whatever they need to do to it, and then push it live.
Or don't.
They do whatever they need to do to it.
And then the bugs identified on the PTS still exist in live.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Most of the time. Looking at you, Dread Palace. Looking at you.
But basically, if you want any more information about it, head over to TOROCast.com. There's 2 articles up. One of them is basically a repost of the specific details of what the expansion is in and of itself. And then there's also there's a video trailer. It's a short trailer. It's actually pretty good. It makes the content and the combat itself look very flashy. And head over and check that out. It actually looks like it's going to be pretty good. I hope that it remains that. I hope that it fulfills the promise that I think it's going to be. But that's all I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have any other thoughts before we move on?
Nope. You're good.
So Rhode's not here. I don't have anybody doing obnoxious meat and potatoes. So,
Awkward.
You could try.
I was almost hoping that he would jump in, but I don't think he's.
The meat and potatoes.
Thanks, Rode.
Eat
He's
it.
probably asleep, snoring again.
No,
I'm good.
No, we'd know if he was snoring. That was pretty loud.
Yep.
He was waiting to see how awkward the silence could get.
Yeah.
Astros nailed it.
What we're going to do for the meat of the show this week is get a little more in depth than we've ever gotten on any of our shows before with actual strategies for operations. Especially since the 2 new ops, Dread Fortress and Dread Palace. Correct me if anybody has a different opinion here, but my opinion is they are almost unpuggable.
Oh, yeah.
Because of how complex the mechanics are and how much team coordination is required.
Well, even up until now, well, Tuesday, assuming that they fix the bugs in story mode under Access, there's no, unless it's like a pug of the Avengers, there's nobody who could. I mean, especially without voice communication, you won't get past Access.
I think you're right. Just not, before we actually get into this, I tried to pug 16-man story fortress on my healer yesterday, as a matter of fact. We one-shotted Nephra. Not a big deal at all. Nobody died. Down the boss, no problems. We get through the puzzle fairly easily because the gate puzzle is super easy on story mode because when you click the crystals, they go away and you don't ever have to click them again.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun on hard mode when you're standing there going, who has to click what? And try to, because you have to channel. They don't go away. We get up to Draxus, and it turned into a cluster. It was unbelievable. I mean, it didn't help that someone in our group, when we got into that room, just ran up and attacked Draxus. Half the people were there, half the people weren't there. Some people were AFK because of how long it takes to get through the puzzle, and all of a sudden we get this message that Draxus has raised the alarm, and you just kind of sit there and do a face palm, and I go, boy, I'm glad that I'm an operative because I just exited combat. No repair bill for me.
You can run out of the room too, just saying.
Yeah, I think if you run out down the hallway and kind of make a left, and you get far enough out that you get out of combat.
Yeah,
True story, he's actually afraid of hallways. That's why he's a gate commander.
Well, as long as the gate stays closed, you can never go down the hallway.
That's right.
So it protects him from his phobia. But, I mean, a total of about 40 minutes spent with this pug at that boss, and I tried to explain it to them because I've run it with my guild more times than I'd like to admit to when we were trying to clear it in hard. I broke down all the waves for them. I even told them to go to a strategy site and look at it so they could have the wave list in front of them because it helps to know what's coming next, and I don't expect all 16 people in a pug to memorize which ads are coming from which direction. 45 minutes we were at this. We only had 2 or 3 pulls on it, and it was just it was not happening. There's no way it was happening.
You did this as a 16, did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
Yeah, you're crazy.
I didn't put the team together. I just answered the call. Somebody said they needed a healer for Dread Fortress. I said, sure, I'll do it. And I got in and went, oh, this is 16. This is going to be fun.
Wait, he's crazy for going or crazy because I didn't kill it?
No, for 16s, I wouldn't go in there. It's 8s would be hard enough to coordinate between people. 16 people that have no idea what they're doing in there.
May looks down at me, looks down her nose at me anyway for pugging. It just makes it worse that I just...
No, I'm terrified of it.
I still was the one who was saying that Terra from Beyond story and S&V story were somewhat unpuggable. I'm not talking like hard mode dudes who want to pug on their alts. I'm talking like Joe guy who isn't in a raiding guild who wants to group finder it and has never done it before. Like if you compare it to WoW's LFR, I just don't think they do enough to. The whole point of story mode is for people to go in, be able to win, and see the story, right? And like I still think that the bar is way too high for some of those bosses, especially these. I mean, they're not in the group finder, so you can basically say they're not supposed to be puggable. But still, I think they got a ways to go to kind of bridge that gap.
I think at the very beginning when TFB was revamped at 55 and when S&V came out, clearing them in story with a pug was a challenge.
Yeah.
I feel though that the Fortress and Palace story, the challenge is exponentially greater than what S&V was. They're not very accessible to someone who's not in a decent guild that has a voice server that coordinates, that raids together. Right. I really don't think they're very accessible to people who get on a Tuesday night and will go, boy, I'd really like to see this new content, and gets in a group and wipes for the rest of the night because, I mean, and I've gotten to the point with pugs, whether it's, TFB or SNV, that if I have people in my group that have never run it before, which you'd be surprised at how many people have not run those ops before, and they've been out for, eons now.
Yeah.
I get people in my groups all the time who they've never done it before. So my rule becomes, listen, get a pair of headphones, plug them in, Here's my vent server. Get on my vent. I don't care if you don't have a mic, if you can't talk, just get on my vent server. I will explain everything to you. I will walk you through it step by step. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to tolerate people who won't tell me they've never been here before, and then it becomes painfully apparent they haven't.
Yeah.
And I don't tolerate if people expect me to type out all the explanations for the fights, because that's not fun to me. And my cutoff for where I'll tolerate nonsense in pugs is where it kills my fun. This is a game. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
if you look at it right now, the rewards coming out of the story modes of the Dread Ops, that it's not worth it for people to wipe and wipe and wipe and wipe, because you're still getting Arcanian gear for the
you're
most
getting
part.
Arcanian. However, the last couple bosses do drop some Underworld.
Yeah, but you're not. I mean, you're most likely not going to get to those when you could just go farm Elite somewhere else and then go buy 72 gear. You
Mhm.
know. So I mean, if someone wants to maximize their time, they're not going to do it that way. And that to me seems like it's a really bad design too. But
Yeah, no, it's maybe if the rewards were a little better, or maybe if story mode is as hard as it is, it really should be dropping, even if it's not set bonus gear. It should be dropping the either Underworld, or maybe Underworld with a few pieces of Shadowed.
Yeah.
Which is the 75 non-set bonus stuff. Or maybe they could just make it a little easier and keep it at Arcanian, and it would make it more accessible to.
I think that would be fine.
To pugs.
Just keep all group finder at that level of it should be doable with, entry level people with purple 66, and then you go and you get Arcanian and it should be a little bit easier. I'm totally fine with that.
Or you make the mechanics not as punishable, because
Well, yeah.
it's so there's so many death mechanics in these two places that you could have the same mechanic. You could have Mass Flick that barely does any damage, that you learn how to dispel Mass Flick, but it doesn't punish you for not doing it per se.
Yeah, well, I want to ask Mike's opinion, because I know he's run it at least 3 times now.
Me?
Crickets.
Yeah, come on.
Crickets.
I mean, I don't know.
That's actually part of what we're getting at. You're not in a guild that runs ops content frequently, are you?
No.
And do you have any desire to try to pug these raids after hearing everything you've heard us say?
No, I don't like. The problem is on my server, especially because it's an RP server, I struggle to pug raids in general.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, and as a DPS, makes it even harder, because you're like, there's probably on my server especially, it's like 80% is DPS. So it's pretty hard to pug, and I've got no interest in doing Dread Fortress or Dead Prowess unless it's with the guild and I can talk on voice chat, because that's the way I like to do ops anyway. Or else, because to be honest, pugging raids aren't fun in general if you're not doing it with a bunch of guildmates or a bunch of friends, to me. So
Then it just becomes a gear farm, which, I mean, some people want that, and that's fine, but no, I agree with you.
Actually, if you hit up, if you hit up, I hate to keep plugging our website, if you hit up TOROCast.com, I put an article, one of my pugging blogs up this week, and I explained in a comment in there why I enjoy pugging, because pugging it adds an extra challenge level to something. I've run story TFB and SNV dozens of times, and it's the same every time. The only thing that changes is the team makeup. And when I run it with a guild group, we're in and out in 40 minutes. It's boom, done. And everybody knows what everybody's going to do, and we all rely on each other. I go in a pug group, and it's like, it takes that story mode content, and the pug group turns the difficulty into hard. And it's fun, unless it's not.
Someone in the chat just said that harder content makes smarter players, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think balanced content makes better players. Like, if players don't know what they're doing and they're just dying over and over again, they're not learning. And if they're able to learn that content, like if it's telegraphed fine with raid warnings and stuff, and they know what to do, then I think that teaches them better than just we're all getting one shot and nobody knows why.
I think there's 2 ways to look at this. This actually didn't end up being a discussion I planned to have, but this is a decent discussion. I think the 2 ways to look at the difficulty level of content is, should story content be something that is accessible to the casual, average, or slightly less than average player to be able to see the content, experience the story, and without it being brutalizing? Or
Yes.
should story mode content be something that prepares a player to be able to do hard mode? And there's two schools of thought, and I used to think that story mode should be something that prepared the player for hard. And as I've played the game more, my stance on that has changed as I've realized that there are a lot of very casual players that play this game. Star Wars: The Old Republic is not the hardcore players game. It's the Star Wars fans game.
Yep.
Um, and I think that it's kind of shifted my viewpoint on. I think story mode should be something that has minimalistic rewards, not stuff that's dropping from the heavens and making you god mode. It should be reasonable rewards. The content should not be very, very difficult. The content should be something that is very accessible to the average casual player. But that hard mode should require team coordination and a gear check and a DPS check. And hard mode should be something that you purposefully go in not to get the gear. You go into hard mode to clear the content. And there's kind of a difference, I think.
Yep.
I don't know, because as a casual endgame PvEer, I want to go. Like, I generally only do story mode, but the reason that I would like, say for example, my guild is a roleplay guild, and the reason that we do it is because one, we want to see what the story is of the ops, and second is because we want the gear for our characters to look good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be able to get the gear, the cosmetic gear that end game PvEers do, just without the actual mods.
The look, you mean?
Yeah,
Like-
which
yeah.
the way that they've been going with the gear models, that's very possible at this time, because all the gear models for everything are the same. They're just different colors.
Yeah, but I definitely don't think it should be a stepping stone. It should be, because a lot of the players just play casual and they enjoy the class stories and the McKeb story, and especially with something like Dread Fortress and Dread Palace, where it's a continuation of the overall story of the Dread Masters, which has spanned both class stories and etc. etc. Story mode should be accessible to pretty much every player, because it's the finale of the story.
There's such a fantastic model for this too out there with what WoW's done. I'm not saying everything WoW does is perfectly, but I think the one thing that they've really nailed is how to get casuals into raiding to get to see that sort of story. I think it's done really well.
But yeah, that's mine.
And I mean, I get what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of it. And there's mechanics in Dread Fortress where if you take a pug into Dread Fortress and you get to that second boss, I don't think that in story mode letting Mass Affliction get out should be a team wipe.
Right.
It shouldn't.
And it pretty much is.
Yeah.
Interrupting's hard.
It pretty much is. It's a team wipe. It is possible to heal through it. We actually are when my guild dropped hard mode this past week, we screwed up. We let a Mass Affliction out, and our healers healed through it, and we cleared that attempt. So yes, it is possible, but I don't feel that the average pug even in story mode, is going to heal through a Mass Affliction getting out. That's it. You're done. You're toast. And
I don't
having
get why
that
you
kind
can't
of
group find.
because it's too difficult, I think. I think
If you didn't
also
have
it takes
tanks,
Oricon out of the
thing.
mix. It takes Oricon out of the mix. If you could group find, why would you go and do the Oricon storyline? Actually, we have somebody who just said in the chat that he could have sworn that Mass Affliction is cleansable in story mode.
It is.
Mass Affliction is cleansable in hard also. The problem is it deals so much damage that the cooldown on a cleanse is enough to pretty much get somebody killed, just about. My raid team happens to run with a couple. We have 2 mercenaries. So between mercenaries, we have a sniper who can cleanse himself when it goes out. I'm an assassin tank. I can cleanse myself. We have a situation where we have a power tech and we have a jug tank. Paratech DPS and a Jug Tank are the only two people in the raid that can't cleanse themselves of a dot. So when Mass Affliction gets out, we can pretty much immediately everybody cleanses themselves, except for two people, and they wait 4 seconds for a cleanse, and we can get through it. The average pug isn't doing that.
See, our trouble in there wasn't with Mass Affliction; it was with Guardian Affliction.
Yeah, the Guardian Affliction is pretty terrible, and you can't cleanse it.
Yeah.
The other one that's pretty terrible is the Corrosive Grenade,
Yeah.
because it's only tech cleansable.
Mm-hmm.
I run with 2 Sork healers,
You run 2 circulars.
which is where having 2 mercs in our comp actually helps us, because our mercs end up doing all of the tech cleanses.
You just can't stack. You
No.
absolutely can't stack in that fight.
Yeah, and that also kind of depends on your raid comp too, in that fight, because if you have a lot of melee DPS, you could be having problems. We only have 1 in our group, so it tends to not go out to too many people. Actually, what I wanted to get to was I'd like to actually discuss a bit of Dread Fortress and kind of go through each of the bosses and talk about mechanics. I mean, this is still a relatively new operation. It's only been out for like a week and a half. I've been in a couple of pugs to get through Fortress. Some have been successful, some have not. 16-man seems to be the ones that aren't being successful, and people are trying to go in to get extra ultimate comms, which means they're generally getting 0 because they can't clear it. And I know that we have a couple people here that have done them in both story modes and hard mode. So I think what we'll do is start with Dread Fortress. I think our next recording we're going to talk about Palace. I don't have a whole lot of input on Palace. I've only done the first 3 bosses in story mode so far, because when I did it was the first week and the healing challenge was bugged and we didn't get past the 4th boss.
I have zero input. I'll probably do these raids like this time next year.
No, I guarantee you'll get to one of them in the next 2 weeks. I guarantee.
I don't think so.
Basically, starting off Dread Fortress, the first boss is Nephra.
Who bars the way?
Yes, it's basically in my opinion, it's a giant 2-legged beetle.
It's really ugly, isn't it?
It has buggy eyes. If you pay attention, it has buggy eyes. It looks like it has googly eyes. They're like these big white things on the side of its head with a little black dot. The only thing that would make it more awesome is if they were actually googly eyes and the dots like spun around while it was walking.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about that boss is it's so far in this game, it's the first boss that I have seen that requires essentially 2 main tanks. Every other fight in the game, it might have a swap mechanic, it might have and you need an off tank to pick up ads or something like that. Nephra requires 2 tanks to stand in front of the boss and eat the cleave, because the cleave is massive. I don't know exactly how much it hits for in story mode, but I know that if 1 tank stands in front of it in hard mode, they're going to eat about 70,000 in damage, which, even though you can get some endurance heavy tanks, nobody's surviving that. And I've had a lot of.
It's not a one-shot in story mode, but it's damn close.
How close? What have you seen?
Well, I mean, if our tanks are in the mid 30s, upper 30s,
And they'll survive it.
They'll probably it'll probably get them down to like 5 or 6. Yeah, it's basically survivable once.
Put it this way: in hard mode, it is so much of an issue that if one of your tanks dies, you have to one of the DPS has to get in front of the boss right away, because the amount of time that passes between your tank dying and getting a res on him and getting him back up is enough time for your other tank to get one-shotted unless somebody else is standing there to take the cleave. It's because that attack comes out quite frequently. But basically the way the fight works is you come into this room and there's pillars all over the place and there's this big giant nasty boss at the end, and you have to pick up the boss and turn him around because the cleave is gross, and both tanks have to stand in front and eat the cleave. And everything's going great until about 30 seconds into the fight. All of a sudden the entire raid gets a dot. It can be cleansed by both force and tech, but it has to be cleansed because it ticks for quite a bit. And it tends to be, I've timed it with my force shroud It is exactly every 30 seconds for the entirety of the fight. It comes out, it hits everybody in the group.
No, not in story mode.
Does it still come out in story mode?
No.
Is it a debuff, or it doesn't come out at all?
I don't think it comes at all.
I honestly don't remember. I've only run it in story mode once. Maybe it comes out and it just isn't that brutal. You don't even notice that you get this dot, but in hard mode, you notice, and it has to be cleansed as quickly as possible. And then the
Oh, it only deals 325 per tick.
oh, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Hard mode,
It's like a tickle.
hard mode. It'll kill the tank if you don't get it off quick enough.
Yeah.
So that comes out every 30 seconds on a timer. And the other thing that goes on is you get these kamikaze ads. They're droids that come out, and in most of the guides that I've read, I've basically read, and I was reading Suckerfish's guide, and there was a couple other guides. I've read that the droids come out and they target a random player. Is it random, or is it based on the threat table?
It's random, I believe.
That's random.
It's random. They come out, they target a random player and run to that player. They run to that player, they pause, and then they make this big giant red circle on the ground. And everybody has to get out of the circle, because if you stand in the circle, the droid goes kamikaze and suicides itself and explodes, and you die. Is it a one-shot on story? I know it's a one-shot in hard.
No, it's not. And they behave like firebugs in
Okay.
in S&V. So you can kite them, but then once they get up to you, and either they hit you or you hit them, then the circle will stop, and then they'll explode, so you have time to run out.
One thing that I've noticed, and I haven't seen it in any of the guides yet, is that the sniper that's in my raid group discovered that when immediately upon, and you can watch the mini map for when you see their little red dot spawn, immediately as soon as they spawn, he attacks it.
Yeah.
By doing that, he will pull it. And we've cleared that boss twice, once the first week and once this week. And in both of the times we cleared it, the exploding ad didn't aggro to the tanks once.
You have to have the timing just right, though.
Which makes it so nice, because the first couple times we pulled it, I'm an assassin. The other tank in my raid team is a jug, and so first time I ran to the left, he ran to the right. Well, now there's not two tanks in front of the boss. We die. Second time I run off. We run the same direction. I force speeded and he didn't. I went faster than he did. He was still in front of the boss. He got one-shotted. It was just the movement with the two tanks having to get out of the circle, but still maintain their proximity together to eat the cleave. You really have to be moving in unison. So then we just realized, well, we can just control who keeps getting the exploding ad, and the tanks never move. So the last two times we've cleared it, both tanks, we set up shop in front of one of the pillars on the stairs at the end, and we don't move the whole fight, and it trivializes the whole fight, quite frankly.
My only thing that I would say for that is be careful when it comes to Nightmare, because they'll probably have an added mechanic, which will mean that you can't do that anymore.
I'd be willing to bet there will be more than one ad that comes out.
Yeah, it'll be something, or that some tank thing that you'll have to move or taunt off or something.
Or I wouldn't be surprised if there's something where a tank gets a debuff and you have to swap a DPS in or something till a debuff drops out. But we'll have to see when it gets to Nightmare. But I mean, I don't know. Do you have anything to add to that? Either Brian or May. I mean, we wiped on this boss quite a few times last week when we did it for the first time. So I've seen it many times.
On story mode, it's pretty much a loot pinata. If you can, unless you have people who aren't paying attention to the ads, everything else is kind of wussy. So we tried because we did it at first, and we're like, oh, we're badasses. This should be really easy on hard mode. And then you go into hard mode, and it just like rips you apart. Because we had a sniper that tried to do that too, because he did it once. He was like, oh my god. But then I don't know that he was right when you have to hit it right as it lands. So we decided to kind of say, okay, we're going to go push through Palace on story mode first. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that gets balanced in 2.4.1 on Tuesday, or changed at all.
I would say, as far as tips are concerned for healing, your cleanse priority for debuff should always be tanks, yourself, and then DPS. And I always leave Marauders till last because
Ouch.
no, if they're Annie, no, oh, if they're Annie, it helps them to be taking that damage, and you
'cause
bastards
they
can
have-
basically mitigate everything anyway. So I don't need
Well,
to
they
heal you.
get Fox from taking damage, don't they?
Yeah, they get rage or something.
Let them get hit. That's pretty. That is very Sith of you.
No, our Marauders ask us to. They say, "Don't cleanse us."
Are they all Annihilation?
No, Stead's Carnage. Well, when they run Annie, they do it. When they're Carnage, I have to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's a tip, I guess. Always do your tanks first, then do yourselves, and then DPS. And DPS should be able to. Most DPS should be able to self cleanse their own every other one. So.
Yeah, because like I said, it is exactly a 30-second timer. So we actually found while we were doing it that it was very helpful. I was timing it based on my Force Shroud, and when there was about 5 seconds left on my Force Shroud, or 35 seconds left, I would call out in our channel that, there's 5 seconds to a cleanse, because the last thing you want is to have a healer in the middle of channeling something, or just started channeling something, and has to stop a channel, waste a global cooldown, start having a few seconds ahead of time to prepare. As a general rule, is always nice. And if your raid team isn't calling things out beforehand and anticipating when things are going to happen, you're doing it wrong. There's my I'm not a plebeian moment for the day. Second boss is Draxus, and he is the one that we were talking about before, where he's the pug killer. I really think he's the operator 9 of this operation. I really do think that he's the pug killer. The puzzle to get through, figure it out. I'm not going to talk about that. It really isn't that hard. It's a little more difficult in hard mode because everything has to be clicked all at the same time to open up the gates. But it's fairly easy to figure out. But basically, the way the boss functions is the boss himself has like 8 hit points. If you look at him funny, he'll die. He really has nothing. In hard mode, he has less than 750 grand. He's a paperweight, the guy. And the most difficult part about the fight is that there are 9 waves of ads that come out, and they come out from 3 different locations. There's actually 4 different locations, because there's the set of steps that are up near the boss, which is where all of the east and west ads come from, and then the ads will come out from the back of the room in the south. But then when the guardians come out, which are waves 7 and 9, they come from the steps in the middle of the room. So the ads show up from all over the place, and every ad type has a different mechanic. There's the corruptor ads that have how long is the channel in story mode on Mass Affliction? Is it 8 seconds?
I would probably say it's longer, but I could be wrong on that. I know we have plenty of time to get over there.
Whatever the channel is in story mode, it's a large chunk of time. In hard
Yeah.
mode, correct me if I'm wrong, May, I think it's 6.
Yeah, it's 6.
There's an ad type, it's called a corruptor, that comes out, and they come out several times during the fight. They're in at least 3 of the waves of ads.
Mm-hmm.
There are also periods of time where there are multiples, where you will have 1 on either side. There's another where you have 2 in the rear. You have 1 in the rear, and there's another wave where you have 2 on either side. They have to be interrupted. Even in story mode, they have to be interrupted, because I don't know, is the Mass Affliction in story mode a bug, or is it really supposed to hit as hard as it's hitting in story?
No, it's broken. It's going to be fixed on Tuesday.
Okay. That's probably going to make that a lot more puggable, because expecting a pug to be able to coordinate all of the different interrupts, because everyone has to interrupt unless you have a bunch of marauders. Tanks have to, DPS have to. We usually use our healers as an emergency backup for interrupts, but our DPS and tanks can get them all unless somebody screws up and 2 people interrupt at the same time. But every one of the Mass Afflictions from the corruptor ads has to be interrupted. And we found the only way that this fight was even remotely possible was that everyone in the raid team has to have an assignment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you guys did it, May. I mean, did you have assigned locations for each wave for each one of your players?
Yes, they all are all of our DPS is really in tune with each other, and you put I mean, we have a lot of melee in some of our groups, and we have a lot of range in our other groups. So knowing where everybody's going, know what's happening in every single wave that comes out is what helped us, and we call it out in the beginning. And it's one of those bosses where you have to do progression. Every single person has to pull a wave, figure out what to do with that wave, wipe on the next wave. It's like what's that Simon Says game? It's like red, blue, green. You have to do it a billion times
Yes.
before you figure out. It's like muscle memory because they don't know where things are popping up. They pop up at the same place every time basically. So you just have to learn it.
Yeah, you probably did it the same way we did. What we ended up doing the first time we went in was we would pull it and get a wave to come out and see what that wave did, make some notes, get the next wave, see what that wave did, and keep going until a wave wiped us. And just kept keeping notes on this is where they were coming from, this is what each ad type did, because we were pulling it before there were any real guides up for it. And we actually made the decision before we went in that guides or not, we wanted to go in and figure it out on our own. We've never done that before with any progression content because we're not really a progression guild. We're just an above average PvE guild. I'm calling it like I see it. So we decided that we wanted to figure it out for ourselves. So it was a little bit of a longer wipe fest for us, but when we did finally drop it, we felt like we accomplished something.
Feel good.
Yeah. So literally, we're just sitting there. We're keeping notes. All right, the first wave does this. It's the Subtaroths. They explode. Stay away from them. Second wave, it's dispatchers and more Subtaroths. And just kept the list and used that list every time we got a little further. We used that list to tell to break down. All right, we need this many DPS to be on this side. We need these guys to be in the rear. You have to coordinate. You've got who's using their interrupt first, who's using it second. The Dismantlers kind of threw us for a loop when they came out because the Dismantlers are an ad type that they have a very, very short channel that that knocks back their target and puts a debuff on him so that their next attack on that debuffed target hits for, I don't know, infinity. It's kind of what it feels like. It's a kill shot in story too, isn't it?
They don't do the knockback. They don't
do the knockback, but
yeah.
Do they do the debuff? Do you still get hit for a gazillion hit points?
Nope. I mean, they do it. They do a ton of damage, but that buff isn't there.
I mean, the only time we did it in story, we didn't bother to find out. We did it the same way we tried it in hard because we did hard before story.
Yeah.
So I honestly don't know, but we were trying to figure out, how exactly do we do this? Do we want to do a tank swap because there's two up at once? I think in reading Suckerfish's guide, you guys actually do a tank swap, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
What we ended up doing is since we have a power tech DPS, we put our power tech with our jug, and I'm an assassin tank, and so I took our sniper with us because he's actually our top DPS, and the two of us went to each side where the Dismantler is, and the Dismantler comes out, and I grab him first, and I'm wailing on him until about Fox going to do his channel, and I force cloak. By force cloaking, the aggro instantly goes to my sniper. The sniper takes it. As soon as I see that channel start up, I hit my taunt. As soon as that taunt finishes, my sniper hits exfiltrate, rolls through the damage, and I've got the boss back and nobody gets hit. On the other side, all they do is the power tech, right before that channel's going to come out, he taunts the Dismantler off our jug. And the jug takes the debuff, and as soon as he takes it, the power tech takes the debuff, and the jug taunts him back. Works beautifully. Nobody has to run across the room. Nobody's swapping. The DPS doesn't have to stop DPSing. It took us a little while to get it to work right, but it's seamless now. I really like that strategy for that.
That's good.
Yeah, if you had a power tech or jug DPS, I think that'd be a better strategy to use.
Yeah, it's just
that.
And then, like I said, on my side, I just force route it, and not force route it, force cloak it, and dump aggro and let the sniper take it. But there's 11 different ways to skin a cat. That just happens to be one of them. Generally speaking, I'd really like to know how Suckerfish handled the Guardians in the 9th phase, because that, even when we cleared it, that was our biggest. Because unless I really am terrible at holding aggro, I think that they aggro dump.
They do.
They do.
because we were trying to have. I was trying to hold both guardians while our Jug went and picked up the boss, and basically hold both of the guardians and let the DPS just pour it on Draxus, because Draxus appears to have a period of time after the ninth phase when he's immune for about 10 seconds. And as soon as that immunity drops and he starts taking damage, we wanted to put all the DPS on him and just burn him, because it should only take about 10 seconds to burn him with the amount of health he has. But
That's what we do.
I couldn't hold the Guardians to save my life. I needed to have the other tank taunt swapping, because I could not hold both of them, because by the time I got through, 3 taunt cycles and they're dumping and switching targets, I couldn't hold their the slam, keep it away from the group.
We just had our tank. We had one of our tanks on the boss. We had the other one get the other 2 and pull them over to like one of the far corners, so that if he would lose one of them and they were going to run to somebody else, he had enough time to get him back.
That's not a terrible idea.
Before they went and started slamming in the middle of the raid. I mean, people can move out of it, but at that point, it's such a burn phase on the boss that we don't want to lose anything. I mean, he struggled because there's a lot of damage, but
there is.
That's really our way of faking it.
May, what did you guys do in that phase? Did you have one tank hold a Guardian and Draxus?
I think that we had one. I think we had one tank up the last time I did it this week, and I think that we had one person holding him in the back, and then we just burned the boss.
Yeah, because he doesn't have that much HP.
No.
I mean, even because I think he hits that phase at about 15%, and 15% of he's at 725 total. You can burn that in about 10 seconds. One thing I'd like to touch on that we kind of ignored with the first boss is that the first boss has a 50-50 shot to drop either a Dreadforged belt or a Dreadforged unassembled implant, which really stinks, because quite frankly I could care less about the belt. And as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, May, I think that the Dreadforged implants are best in slot for everybody.
Except for, the last thing you want as a sin is an implant. Especially.
As a Sin tank?
Yeah.
Which implants are you using ahead of them?
I don't know. I don't know specifically for you. I got a gear list for you for what should you ask for. What is your priority gear list?
Yeah, because I've been using the level 45 crafteds, just because they have an ungodly amount of mitigation on them. And it was the Dreadforged implants was one of the few pieces I've seen that has enough endurance to make up for the mitigation loss. Because if I did my math right, the difference between the Veracity 54 Crafteds and the Dreadforged is 1 mitigation stat, but it's like 100 endurance gain. You lose 1 stat of mitigation and you gain 100 of endurance. It's actually worth the trade-off. I don't know if there's anything better in the game. I don't know. I know the Oricanian ones are terrible. I want nothing to do with them. But the implants appeared to be best in slot. But the point I'm getting at is, unless somebody tells me otherwise, I think that the Dreadforged implants are best in slot for everybody. And your 8-man raid team is going to need 16 of them, and they're a 50% chance to drop, which means on average it's going to take 32 weeks to get everybody in your raid those implants. Which
think of that math.
Which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
That really, really stinks. I honestly don't remember what the second boss dropped, because I didn't win it. I took the implant just because I didn't feel like waiting 32 weeks.
Dreadforged
Helmet?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think 1 piece of Oriconian too on hard mode.
I'm gonna let May describe the third boss, because all I did was tank ads the whole time, and I tanked ads the whole time, and at the very end I had to pick up the boss and get him under the magnet, because our main tank died and we just had to burn his lad. I was so frustrated that night. We were all on Skype together while I was progressing in that, and I kept chatting to everybody what our progress was, and We
I
actually
was
had
doing
a
updates.
we had a pull on the third boss where he died at 0% with 17k left. And we were raging so hard you have no idea, because
Healer
at
dots.
the very end, and maybe you can confirm this because we hit enrage at 2%. At the very end, either when he's enraged, the pipe won't stick to the magnet and you just have to deal with it, or we just weren't getting him under the magnet, because when he has the pipe out and the magnet is and the pipe's not on the magnet, he has like 80% damage reduction. So our sniper's looking at numbers like 825 instead of 6 grand. So 17k is really like 200,000 because of the damage reduction. So it was a little frustrating, but we did eventually drop him. But we dropped him with 3 people alive, and kiting the boss under the magnet, and we got it down, and that's what counted. But I did not get to see most of that fight just because I spent the whole time running around the room grabbing ads, because they come out almost as fast as you can kill them.
They come out pretty fast. I like this boss. I think it's pretty easy, I think, but it's a fun boss. I like the magnet mechanic. Basically, your tank tanks the boss until he picks up a giant pipe. And when that happens, there's a magnet floating around the perimeter of the room, and you have to drag the boss underneath the magnet so that and I think that there's like some tricky placement aspect of it, and once you get it, I hear it's easy, but the first time any tank tries to pull that, the first pipe phase is always a little bit rough.
Oh yeah, our Jug was going berserk because we're literally standing there and he's getting sucked up by the magnet, and but the boss's pipe is not, and so we're sitting there just going like what do we have to do? It is very finicky. The placement is it actually seemed, we found out right towards the very end, it seemed like you kind of want the magnet slightly behind the boss on his left shoulder.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Slightly behind.
Like we would see, because the magnet goes in the static way, and our tank would just pull it in front of that and wait for it to come. Because every time he tried to go under it, he would always have a problem like that too. So he
gets picked up, and then the magnet moves further. And,
yeah,
you're playing catch up. There's 2 tricks for ads. Your DPS should always focus on the ads. We ran a lot of snipers, so it was pretty easy. You can also kill the ads in the lava from the mining droid that comes up. But that's a pain in the ass for healers to heal.
It depends on who gets it. If the off tank who's picking up the ads gets it, it's super easy. I just run a zigzag pattern in front of the ads and make them run through it.
We had our power tech doing it, because he kind of can just low cooldowns and just sit in it a little bit. Well, but I mean, mostly the DPS should be able to clear up, especially if they're getting, if they can AoE them down. It's pretty easy to clear those all up, and if you can do it on the boss, it's just added boss damage also.
Yeah, I was trying, since I was on the ads, I was trying to force speed to either to the ads or pick up the ads and then force speed back, get the ads on the boss, and just let them get killed from splash damage from AoE.
The lava is kind of annoying, and a lot of times melee won't get out, so make sure that people get out.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, there's a couple of times, it seems to be like every 15 or 20 seconds, some random person in the raid gets called out that they're targeted by a mining droid, and for like the next 10 seconds, you leave a trail of lava on the floor behind you, and you have to run it around the room.
Kind of like Kephis in Dying in TFB.
When you get the circles.
The same.
And you can use it to kill the ads, because it damages the ads if they run through it too, or you can use it to kill your own team, which is not recommended. But I've seen it.
It's I hope they do more with this fight in Nightmare. The room is interesting. I wish there was more interactable aspects of the room, as far as if there were giant lava pools that you could pull ads into or pull the boss into. It's one of those bosses that I think that it'd be really, really cool and way neater if it was developed, if there were like 2 more aspects of the fight involved in it.
It is probably one of the more tank and spank fights just with some ads.
It is.
Now, I did run this one in both story and hard, and one thing I noticed is that story mode A is infinitely easier than hard. Infinitely, because of the fact that in story mode, the pipe is almost a non-issue. If
Yeah.
you don't get the pipe on the magnet in story right away, it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah, it was a complete mess when we went in there, and we still one-shot it.
Yeah, you can go through blindfolded with a pitchfork and
especially after spending a night wiping on Draxus, we were like, okay.
It is a little refreshing after wiping on Draxus for 3 hours. You get into this boss and you one-shot it and you go, really? That was it?
You're like, well, it was a Rancor. That's a robot.
Robot Rancor, yeah.
Our first pull after literally 2 days of wiping on Draxus, we finally down Draxus. We get to Grobthrock. We get in our first pull on him, not really having any idea what to do other than knowing we have to deal with the pipe and the magnet. We get him to 2%, and we're like, well, that was and that was uplifting. Let's go kill him. But in hard mode, one of the major differences from story is that when he picks up the pipe, it hurts. It hurts a lot, and it hits everybody in the raid. I don't believe range matters. I think it hits everybody no matter what.
It's more of the interrupting, I would say, as far as healers in range is concerned. It's all you cannot cast anything because it interrupts everything.
Because he doesn't stop doing it. He chains it one right after the other, and every time he hits, it's I believe it's around $7,000 a hit. It's quite a bit. Is it less than that?
I think so. It's healable for a while.
But basically, until your tank gets him under the magnet, your DPS isn't going to be able to channel anything.
Yeah.
Because he does it so frequently that unless it's like a 1.5 second channel, you're not getting it off. You're not getting orbital strikes. You're not getting any dark infusions. It's not happening. You're not getting anything channeled until that pipe is dealt with. Fourth and fifth bosses are all on you, May. I have pulled Corruptor 0 twice in hard mode, and the first wave of ads destroyed us both times. We fumbled our way through it in story mode, and it wasn't really all that difficult. It's and Brontis is the reason why no matter how well a pug does, they'll never actually get past this op.
I don't know. I think that Corruptor 0 also is a boss that most pugs will not get through all the way.
They can handle the ads fast enough. The beam mechanic isn't that rough.
You don't think they'll just wipe on it a while and then figure it out? Because I see the beam mechanic being the pug gets through it, kills everybody, kills all the ads, and then all of a sudden the beam comes through and they're like, okay, we got through the beam, and then they get killed by the next one. So the next phase they go in and they get through the first 2 beams, and then they get killed by the third one. I actually think that the beams are going to kill a lot of pugs and make them go, he never stops, and run away.
Well, once they realize that he just goes, was it clockwise or counterclockwise? It's not like it's random.
He does a pattern across the room.
Yeah.
And you run from one side, and then you run to the other side, and then you run across to the other. It's not that difficult.
Yeah.
But
it's anyone with a little bit of lag who just gets pieced out,
That actually is a question that I had, because I didn't get that far in hard. What is the time constraint in hard mode? Because in story mode it feels like you have about 45 minutes that you have plenty of time. You can get a cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette on your way to getting out of that laser.
Yeah, and you have nothing else to do either.
Yeah. How is that in hard?
5 seconds, maybe. I would say less than 5 seconds.
So it's a lot tighter.
How long is it in story mode? I mean, do you really have that much time to get around?
Yeah, you really do have that much time in story
45
mode.
minutes between each laser.
Yeah, you
3
I don't
hour
know.
counter.
I didn't time it. I don't know exactly how much time it is. It's a long time. Enough time that you feel like you've actually done something wrong and you should be over, like, DPSing the boss.
I bet it's the same amount of time as the takeoff period in Titan and S&V. I think it's about that same amount of time.
No, I would say it's less. I would say less than 5 seconds in hard mode. I think that if somebody was slow, I think that I would maybe barely have time to get like an extricate on them to get them around the corner. It is tight, and you have to You have to
Wow, Reuven just said the channel for the laser is 1.5 seconds in hard mode.
It's not that fast. I do not have the response time to get around that corner in a minute, in 1.5 seconds. Oh yeah, see, it's about five. I would say it's about 5 seconds that you have once he shoots, and the laser is done. You have about 5 seconds to get around the other side. I think the shot itself is for 1.5 seconds. I think it's on the 5-second thing.
I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet in hard mode.
It's not. There's not enough time to get around in 1.5 seconds. I think the whole cycle of him landing, him shooting, him going up again is 5 seconds.
Like I said, we're getting destroyed by the first wave of ads, so we haven't figured that out yet.
So there's 2 waves of ads. There is melee ads and ranged ads. Melee ads, when taunted, will just run to the off tank, so you can deal with those ads via AoE while just tanking the boss. The melee ads actually you have to go to them. Let's see, and then there's all this other stuff going on. There is the red reticle missile salvo that knocks people down. That can actually, you can't get ads down sometimes if you're all knocked down on the ground. And if somebody doesn't run out of the raid, it'll knock everybody down. And then concussion mine is the debuff that you have to run next to Corruptor Zero to get, and there's no actual visual animation, it's just a debuff.
I'm sorry, you called him Corruptor Zero. I think you meant to call him General Grievous.
Yeah.
He does look like General Grievous.
He sounds like him too. You actually listen to the voiceover. If you listen to the modulated voice, it's a voice twin for Grievous. I felt a little lied to.
Alright, so I have a definitive answer on it. It's 3.5 seconds is how long you have to get around.
Okay, that's pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
That is fairly quick.
That is not a lag. You cannot lag for that.
So I mean, is he just a big DPS check? I mean, what's his enrage like, or is it just? I mean, I honestly don't know. I don't have a point of reference on it, just because we haven't gotten past the first phase.
I don't necessarily think that it's a. No, it is a DPS check. There's a DPS check aspect of that. You have to be able to get those ads down fast enough that it's not overlapping into the different phases of the fights. It's constant damage. Constant damage is always going out, so there's always healing to be done. I don't think for tanks it's a necessarily really tricky fight. So it is more on DPS.
Is it? Is there a priority for the ads, or
Air droids first,
okay?
because they heal the other ones.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what we found in story mode. But
The name kind of gives it away.
yeah,
So, I mean, I guess in story mode he wasn't really all that difficult that I found. You could kind of screw up on some of the ads, and we one-shotted him on story mode, and I didn't think he was that hard. He was nowhere near as difficult as Draxus. You can fumble your way through Corruptor Zero, as far as I'm concerned, in story. Hard, whatever May says is what I'm going with, because we're still banging our head against the wall on it. Not sure when we're going to pull it again.
I think once you figure out each phase, it's pretty easy to handle. I think that you should be fine. I think that if you can get Draxus, you can get this one. If your DPS is on.
Yeah, I mean, I know we can get it. Our DPS actually is pretty good, and I'm fairly certain that we can down it. We just have to do some more pulls on it. Actually, it's my understanding that, and I think I saw one person with it. Corruptor Zero dropped something pretty cool in hard mode.
his weapon.
He drops his weapon. It basically looks like you're running around with some kind of giant kitchen tool.
Yeah.
It really does look like a kitchen tool, if you ask me.
I wish
Is that
they
the
did with
sword?
more plus. Yeah.
It's the sword. It's the
Yeah.
Corruptor blade.
Yeah, it does look cool, and the little it changes color based on your lightsaber crystal. There's a little energy thing at the base of it.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
our Jug wants it pretty bad, and I think we've kind of told him if we drop it, he can have it, because none of our Sorks want it, and nobody else can use it. So he's like chomping at the bit to want to drop it. He doesn't care about the gear. He wants a stupid sword.
It looks pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Is it a main hand only, or can a Marauder use 2 of them?
Oh, I actually don't know that one. I gave it to a Marauder this week, so maybe I should ask him.
Somebody in the chat says they won that
yes.
sword, but they didn't give it to him.
Oh, well, he rolled twice. Listen, and all my raiders in here being sassy. No, they rolled twice.
It looks like it's main hand only.
Oh, yeah, it's main hand only.
It's racist.
Uh-oh, we got braggers in the chat talking about pets.
Yeah.
Which boss is it that drops the Drake? Is it the last one or is it Zero?
Brontes, I believe?
Brontes drops it?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that brings us to Brontes. Why don't you talk to us about Brontes? I've done Brontes twice in story mode. Once was with a pug that couldn't make it past the ads around the room with the lightning that follows you because they couldn't DPS the ads fast enough and they all exploded.
Oh, okay. That's far in the fight.
And our guild one-shotted it in story, but we have. I think it's more on that fight tends to be more on the DPS in my opinion than anybody else.
I would say every phase of the fight, it's a different aspect of the raid group that is going to be under the most pressure. This is the boss that when progression happened, everybody did up to Brontes, and then I think it was a little bit bugged, and nobody really knew what was going on, and everybody switched to Palace, did 4 bosses in Palace, and then it came back to Brontes. In the first phase, there is 3 sets of double tentacles that come up. It's pretty standard. The tanks are going to tank them. DPS is going to DPS. You just split halfway down the middle. The tentacles need to be DPS down at the same point because they apply a debuff, and the tanks can't have both debuffs at the same time. So you have to DPS the tentacles down, or the hands. They have giant tentacles. You DPS down the hands at the same time. They go underwater or under the ground and then reappear. And that way, the tanks don't have both debuffs, because if they do, they take a lot of damage, and it's not very much fun to heal.
Does that exist in story? Because I don't remember there being a debuff in story. I just remember you got to kill the little guys first, while the tanks take the big guys, and once the little guys are down, we just assign a priority to kill the big tentacle.
The hands don't put debuffs in story.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking forward to that then.
It's an attunement. It's I can't remember what it looks like. One's blue, one's green. You'll see it. You can live through it if you have 2 of them for a short amount of time. Every once in a while, we'll have our DPS won't be talking. We'll push tentacle, and one of the tanks will get both of them, and they just take a lot of damage. If you know it's coming, it's definitely healable, but it's not something that you want to do all the time. It's easier just to DPS things down at the same time, I think. The smaller little fingers pop up. You have to go to those, and after you get those 3 sets of tentacles, hands, the transition phase is there will be 2 that pop up somewhere randomly in the room, and they will shoot a beam of light or lightning between them, and they also have lightning around the bases, and they will kill you if you get caught in those. We stand on the outside of the room. It doesn't really help. We've actually found too that they seem to aggro onto one person and spawn next to one person. There's 4 groupings of them.
Yeah, they they spawn under the feet of someone. We just had everybody just keep moving in that phase. So even if they spawn under someone, by the time they're up and doing damage, that person's already ran away from them.
We're mean to each other. We try to drop them on people and kill each other, but that's just us.
The 16-man pug that I was in the other day, I joined the pug. They were at the boss, and they just needed a DPS, so I joined it. The first time those ads came out, the ones that connect the lightning, and it's a one-shot. 14 of our 16 people died in under 5 seconds. It was the funniest thing I've ever seen as far as the number of messages on the screen of players have been defeated. The whole screen turned yellow. Boom! Everybody's been defeated all at once. It was kind of funny, actually.
I like to kill people. And you can
you're a sork, so you can do that.
Just extricate someone into it. Oh man, who pissed me off this week? That'd be good to do next week. No.
I'm kind of disappointed nobody runs Karaga's Palace anymore because that was my most favorite place to do it.
to
You
kill
could-
people with?
Oh, it was so easy. It was fun. You know how when you get up to the top of the stairs to go into Bone Thrasher's room,
Hmm.
there's the door that you have to click on and you get the cutscene.
Yeah.
If you're a Stork and you get into that room first, you skip the cutscene, get up there as fast as you can, get in the room, target somebody in your ops frame who's not in the room yet, and start spamming extricate on them. When they finish the cutscene and start loading into that room, you actually get to target them and pull them before their character renders. And
Mhm.
you pull them before they make it in the zone. They take falling damage and zone in dead. So they click on the door, they get through the cutscene. The next thing they see is they're laying on the floor in the middle of Bone Thrasher's room dead with no indication of how it happened.
Wow.
My Republic raiding team hated running that with me because I killed somebody every time because it's so much fun.
I kill people in Hotball.
You kill your own team in Hudball.
Yeah. If it's like my friends all the time, they get mad at me.
Well, that could be a strategy. What if you're down at the other end and the ball's at your end? You could kill somebody in the fire to let them get teleported back to the beginning as long as the door's not as long as they don't get stuck in the penalty box for too long.
Yeah.
See, look, thinking.
I like to kill
Alright.
the ball carrier.
Uh-oh.
Jug tank.
You can do it on SOA too, if you
Ru-
when you're jumping on the
Reuven?
platform.
Reuven in the chat just said that your TFB hard mode, SMP hard mode are canceled for tonight, and KP is on.
He knows full well that I am never the first person to any boss ever.
First person in the room.
No,
As long
I'm
as
Team
there's-
Turtle. That is my
Well-
rating nickname is Team Turtle. The last person.
Well, let me tell you something. If you knew that at every door there was a chance that if you don't zone in first, you're going to get killed, Team Turtle would not be called Team Turtle anymore. You would speed up.
We used to race. I remember in EV we used to race to SOA.
We have a Sork in our team. He's an alt of one of our tanks that no one wants to go into Soa's room with him because he kills everybody at the top. He'll stand up on the top platform and he kind of jumps off the side, extricates, but then turns in midair and goes back to the platform. So you get extricated to where he was in the air, but then he lands back on the platform and you land on the ground.
Dead.
So all right, finish
Phase
your.
2.
We got a little bit off topic, but I think it was worth it.
So after there are lightning fingers that happen, phase 2, Brontes drops down and right in the middle of the room, one of the tanks will tank her, and at all times there will be a tank on her. The other tank, the off tank, will have to go tank these little baby Kefis. They're called corruptive clones, but they're corrupted Kefis clones in my guide because they look like Kefis. And so the DPS.
They don't look like Kefis.
They are
I'm going
Kefis.
with they are Kefis.
They're clones.
It's just
Huh.
this Star Wars the old would not be complete if every operation didn't have Kefis in it. I'm pretty
Agreed.
sure they need to go back and they need to redo EV, KP, and they need to get Kefis into them. Kefis
Put
needs to be in S&V too.
Put Kefis in like the room where, like the bar room where there's all those like yellow mobs where he's just standing in the back, just chilling, having a drink.
But he should be one of the yellow mobs. He should be a friendly. You can one-shot him.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for my Kefis with an F pet. That's what I want. Let's see, what happens in this? Oh, so the corrupted clones come out. DPS has to switch to them. The other big thing that happens during this phase is energy spheres, and these are little orbs akin to the SOA orbs that will spawn on the corners of the room, and they will aggro to a DPS. There is like a tether line that is visual, but as a healer, that DPS will also start taking chunks of damage. We have that person step outside of the main group of people who are DPSing Brontes and the little ads on the outside. We stack in the middle just because it's easier to AoE. But the person who has the energy sphere runs to the outside of the group and we assigned one healer just to power heal them. So that was basically my job. I just made sure that they were topped off. You have to run into them at 15 stacks. So the person who is targeted will target the energy sphere and see the stacks that are on it. There's a buff. And between 15 and 19 stacks is when you want to run into it. I bubble right before they're about to run into it, and I also ask my DPS to count down 3, 2, 1. They will tell you that they're wonderful at it. I will tell you that they are terrible, and DPS do not know how to count down from 3, 2, 1 and run into something on 1.
They didn't watch Sesame Street.
Oh no,
Right.
it's like 3, 2, 1, and they've ran into it at 3. So they just feel the need to finish the countdown. Let's see. There is a cleave that Brontes does. Is Brontes a girl? That's a lore
Yes.
question. All right,
Brontes
Yes.
is definitely a girl.
that's what I thought. She does a cleave, so we face her towards. There's like a red wall in the back of the room to the left when you come in. We tank her towards that, and that gives us the room to handle all the Kefis ads because they don't spawn on that side, and then nobody is getting cleaved. Kefis also shoots out nanites. It's like a visual animation that happens. You can actually watch Kefis throwing nanites at people. So that needs to be cleansed as well. I think that is everything in phase 2. And then after that phase is the phase that you were talking about, where it is that beam of lightning that starts at the red wall and then goes clockwise, and there's 6 ads that you have to go in order and kill. If you don't kill them and the energy and the lightning hits it, it is a raid wipe mechanic. We have our tanks moving ahead of our DPS to like soften up the ads a little bit, and then also just to grab aggro on everything. Then in between those phases, we use healers. A good trick right there is to hold off on killing the last ones, because your DPS should be far ahead of the lightning that's going around the room. So you can hold off on the last ad a little bit to give your healers time to regen before you go into probably the hardest aspect. Probably the hardest part of that fight is phase 3.
Which is that's the burn phase, right?
No, it's not. There's still one more phase. It's a long fight. It's a really long fight. In this phase, there is two of the big hand tentacles, and there's 6 small tentacles. The 6 small ones spawn near the center of the room, and every DPS and healer has to go stand by one of them. They're proximity-based aggro, so whoever is standing closest to it is going to have aggro on it. You have to burn down those 6 small tentacles while tanks tank the 2 large hands of Brontes, and there's like a conal smack that the hands do, and there will be energy orbs coming in again. The tank has to basically maneuver back and forth and slam the orbs before they can hit the DPS, because they do a ton of damage.
All I remember from that is I'm scared to see how hard the hands hit in hard mode, because in story mode they were beating me to shreds.
That's not the most. I would say that it's manageable damage. The orbs getting through is the bigger part of that. Tanks aren't too hard to heal in that. A trick you can use, because your sin is, and it's what Fury uses, is he places his face walk on one side in between the path of the orb, so he can tank on one side, and then if he needs to go get an orb on the other side, he just face walks.
And he can teleport there.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and so it's way easier. Because orbs getting through was a problem that we had when we first were doing progression on it, because it'll just eat a DPS if it gets to them. And then also, everyone's taking a lot of damage, and so you have to target down of the small finger tentacles. Every DPS has to be on one. And then as individual fingers are downed, you can basically taunt off another player on one of the small fingers by standing closer to the finger than they are. So that's the trick that we use, that the people who have their fingers killed first go and take over a finger for someone else. And that's the only way really to stop damage coming in, because people take a lot of damage. It's really hard to heal. I have to go in with full force. I go in with a 3-stack reviv already preloaded. And I basically pop all my relics and cooldowns and everything. It's the most difficult phase in that fight to heal.
I'll be interested to actually see it in hard mode, because story it was pretty easy.
Maybe I'm crazy. I thought it was hard. It helps. The more snipers that you have, the easier it is, because you can just drop orb strikes and kill things. It makes it a lot easier.
until they nerf it.
Until they nerf Orb Strike?
Yep.
Yeah, well. Class balance is nerfing things, not making things better, so far, from what I hear.
I don't know. I'm an assassin tank. I'm getting unnerfed.
Yeah, you're getting
Well, I am losing all my self-healing, which kind of makes me sad, but I'll trade that for not getting spiked.
You should. It's a good trade-off. You guys are going to be pretty OP.
So.
And then the last phase of the fight, there are two big hands, and those have shields. We like to DPS and use them kind of to give ourselves time to regen. If you stand next to one of the hands, and you're underneath one of the shields, it only does damage to you then. But the last phase is a burn phase. She kicks people around the room. It's just a bunch of damage going out, and you hold her against the wall and you burn her. And that is it.
It is complex. It is extremely complex. Like I said,
there's a lot of pictures.
For anybody who cares, the Suckerfish guides will be going up on the TOROCast website probably tomorrow. I am going through formatting them and getting the videos embedded and everything. And pretty much by the time this episode actually posts as a download on the site, you should be able to look up the guides on our site. So pretty much everything we're going over now should be in video and narrative form on the site tomorrow. So because I know it's a lot of information and they are very complex. And if you don't have a guild that is running this content and you're trying to pug it, it would really be nice to be able to actually tell your pug group what to do. Because I don't believe, with the exception of Nephra, I don't believe a pug is going in and figuring this stuff out or just steamrolling their way through it. You have to have someone who knows what the strategy is and can explain it to people. I mean.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think
No,
I am.
I don't think you'd go in. You'd have to be a pretty strong progression team to go in there and figure out some of the stuff.
I'm even talking on story.
Yeah, if you're running a regular pug who hasn't done any of this stuff before, without a guide, without voice comms, you're going to be already pretty hosed.
So, we ended up going very long on that. We originally had wanted to go through Fortress and Palace in this episode, but if we do that, it's going to be like a 5-hour show. So we're going to do Palace on episode 6 in our next one. So I'm going to quickly go through. We're going to have a mailbag section of the show. We've gotten a couple of questions through the comments on the last episode and some of the different articles that are up on the site. And the first one, I'm going to toss it off to both Brian and May, because we were talking about this before the show, and basically we had somebody ask that for a Marauder, and this would also cover a Sentinel, is the set bonus worth, say, sticking with 69s? Because obviously Arcanian gear is a lot easier to obtain for the average player than even Underworld is, and especially easier to obtain than Kelldragon or Dreadforged. So the question was asked that, is it worth it to forego your set bonus and go with, say, 78 armorings, or keep your set bonus and go with the 69 armorings and lose the main stat?
For Carnage, it's not worth doing that, because your 4-piece is pretty amazing with the cooldown reduction and the DPS increase, and then 2-piece, of course, is definitely worth it too. I think May said before we started that it was like 125 DPS loss if you didn't have it.
Yeah, if you don't have the 4-piece in Carnage, it's 125 DPS loss.
Yeah, so I would, and I'm no Marauder expert, but I would definitely say sticking with your 4-piece as much as you can. That's what I'm doing, because I have a lot of, I have mostly Arcanian stuff, but I've filled in mods and enhancements from Verpine or Underworld, so keeping that set bonus is pretty key.
Well, my take on it is, and you guys touched on Carnage, that for Carnage it is a major DPS boost to have that 4 set. If you are Annihilation, or you're a Watchman Sentinel, in my opinion, and maybe somebody can correct me, the 4-piece is not as important. Um, and I'd have to see the math on it, quite honestly, to see the difference between the amount of main stat you increase in going from 69 to 78 for 2 pieces. Is that enough consistent DPS to make up for losing the set bonus? Because it's not as important in Annihilation as it is in Carnage. Um,
I was
don't
under the impression that it was more that the DPS loss would be bigger as Annihilation than Carnage if you lost the 4-piece.
really.
hmm
Uh,
And while you can't use the armorings, you can still, you can still upgrade your mod and enhancements.
mhm. Generally speaking, I think the answer to the question is for a Marauder, for that class, your set bonus is quite important. There are some classes where the set bonus isn't that important. I don't have my set bonus on my Operative Healer. I probably will never get it. I have my 2-piece. I don't want my 4-piece. Um, subsequent to that, though, I have my 4-piece on my Assassin Tank, and I wouldn't lose it. I would definitely not lose it. Which actually leads into our second question. Somebody had asked, basically, the gearing path for an assassin, looking at 69s, 72s, 78s, as an assassin tank, what are you willing to give up to go to 78 gear? And basically what I have determined is that the B mods that are in the 78 stuff, the Oricanian, you can buy it with comms. They are an increase over the non-lettered mods in the Arcanian, and they are also an increase over the lettered mods in Underworld. Under 72 non-lettered mods, however, which are basically something that doesn't have a B at the end of it, still provides more mitigation than the 78 lettered mods. But if you're replacing comms gear with comms gear, if you're replacing 72 B mods with comms gear from Ultimate Comms now from Orcanian, you definitely want to go with the 78s for the mods. The only place I'd start to question that is all the enhancements in all of the comms gear, regardless of which tier it is, are pretty bad because they have such low absorption. I would rather have the 72 mods out of Underworld than the 78s from Orcanian. But essentially what it comes down to is you really need to look at what's your mitigation stat pool. If you're using all comms gear, your mitigation stat pool is going to be very low and your endurance is going to be very high. And that's not a great way to build a tank, but it will get you through story content. If you want to do hard content, you really are going to want the better itemized enhancements and at least the better itemized mods to build up your mitigation pool, because having 40 or 41 or 42,000 hit points is not going to do you a whole lot of good if you're working with an 1800 stat point mitigation pool. I'd much rather see a tank playing as a healer. I'd much rather see a tank with low hit points and have high mitigation because they're easier to heal. And I think that with the introduction of Orcanian gear, and when you look at the itemization on it, you are going to see people who augment with Fortitude, which you already see already anyway, and are going to choose a lot of pieces based on endurance, not mitigation. It is actually currently possible to hit 53,700 hit points in current gear, and I never want to heal that tank.
So spiky.
Yes, never want to heal that tank.
I'd have great numbers.
You would
I'd
have great healing numbers.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, and maybe I'll go into this a little more in depth because we're going very long. I'll go into this in depth on the website, and I'd actually like to talk with May with her her progression tank from Suckerfish, because I have some questions on my own build, and I'll put some stuff up on the website. I actually thought we were going to do a guild spotlight with this show. I'm gonna ask Road. I think maybe we might want to put that in next week's show, so this episode doesn't end up being 3 hours long.
Road's just giggling in the background.
I don't know. I really wanted to get it done on this one.
Just whack it in this one.
Yeah, we probably will. So, Michael, do your thing.
Yeah, okay. So, I got to do the Guild Spotlight, and I interviewed Brett and Eleanor from the Elder Gamers in the EU. Those who are listening to the live show obviously will not get to hear it, but it will be added post-show. So here it is. And then you can continue now.
Right.
All right. Real quick, I want to call out our commenters from our last episode, which was Obi-Wan, Wolf Inspector, Rock, and Pacty. Road, do we have any Twitter shoutouts?
We have one from Mr. LeBeau, no surprise there,
Uh-oh.
who wants a shout-out to the Chocolatary Stam in Hannibal, I think it's Missouri. I don't know. I don't know states.
That was a terrible shout-out.
Hold on, it's not done. Which is followed by the hashtag shameless plug for the lady that took me in for the weekend order line, followed by a shout out for herself. That's it.
I'm really
Mistress
confused.
LeBeau has been shouted out.
Yep.
Mistress LeBeau usually shouts out naughty things about companions.
Yeah, typically. In fact, that's pretty much most of her Twitter feed is naughty things about people in general.
Once
I
again,
appreciate it, though.
Once again, our contact information. We are TOROCast.com. I'm not going to go through all the other contact information again. If you need to get us on Twitter, we're at TOROCast on Twitter. And if you want to get us on YouTube, we are youtube.com/TwonCameraENT. We have a bunch of other podcasts. Bandhammer's live on Sundays at around noon. TOROCast will be recording what's supposed to be the long show, which I guess is going to be about 7 hours now, since this is the short one. We're doing it next Sunday. TSOcast records Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And Mike, why don't you let us know about something new that's coming down the pike?
Yeah, so tomorrow, are we allowed to say what it's about yet? Road?
Sam already went ahead and threw it off during the Bandhammer today, so the hell with it. Go for it.
So yeah, so those who are interested in Behaviour Online's upcoming MMO, Warhammer 40k: The Eternal Crusade, so it's the new Warhammer 40k MMO. Tomorrow we're going to be starting the first episode of Cleanse, Purge, Kill, which will be a podcast devoted to Eternal Crusade, and we'll have news, lore, and pretty much anything else that we can think up in the meantime. So that will be 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be very late for me.
Isn't that like 1
European
o'clock in the morning for you?
Yes, it'll be something like that, yeah.
He has an extremely unique sleep schedule as it is, so it's not like it's really infringing on his day.
So, yeah, do check that out, and come and talk to me in chat and ask me loads of lore questions.
All right, real quick, before we get out of this, contact information for everybody. I am Albie at TOROCast.com if you want to email me. I am also Albie81 on Twitter. Mike, where can we get you?
You can get me at Cosmic Engine 99 on Twitter. Head over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/thecosmic engine, and check out all my videos and subscribe and come and chat to me whenever you want. And that's it.
All right, Brian, where can we find you when you're lost?
When I'm lost, which is all the time, you can always find me on Twitter at Azeros, ASROS, and then Tuesday, Thursday evenings, 8:30 Eastern. Myself and some other of my guildmates, we live stream our ops. There's normally 3 of us streaming, so you can watch me there at twitch.tv/Azeros Gaming.
And May, where can we find you?
You can reach me on Twitter at maybebuzz, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/maybebuzz.
And again, if you guys have anything in regards to lore suggestions, topic suggestions, questions for the host for either show, send all those to road@twoncamera.com or road@torocast.com.
Send all your angry letters.
All those two,
Road
yes.
gets all the hate mail no matter what.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No matter what.
It doesn't even matter if it's about anything to do with this show or any other show. If you're just generally annoyed at life, send it to Road.
And if you work for GameSpot, I'll be sending you my angry letters.
Yeah, you can also say, yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It was a win.
I do believe that that is a show. Thanks for joining us, even though it was super long. May, why don't you take us out?
And that's it, boys.
All right, that's a show.
Works for me. Stopping recording now. Let's see, an hour and 50 minutes plus the 13 minutes of the interview, plus intro and outro music, so that'll come out to be about 2 hours and 10 minutes.
I'm sending you the massage belt.
You need a more comfortable chair.
I do. Well, I
Yeah,
need
right.
one that doesn't squeak either.
Oh, mine squeaks as well. Listen to this.
Yeah.
That sounds rude.
Yes.
I'm sitting in a wooden kitchen chair.
All right.
It's
How
got
did
good
your
back
ass
support.
not fall asleep?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Speaking of people that did fall asleep, Russell just revealed in the chat that he did fall asleep during that.
Well,
It's all right,
Russell's
Russell.
very
I
old
had a
man.
day.
Yes, he is.
Well,
I,
that's because you haven't run the content yet, Mike. So you didn't have any really.
That's all right. You can talk about your numbers. It makes me fall asleep, so I was like, yeah, just chill.
Yeah.
Oh, you want to get to numbers? You should have seen. Did you actually go to the post on the forums I had the other day about tanking and the wonderful jokes that we were making about endurance heavy tanks? And I did a detailed description on why surge is important for tanks with math.
No.
My calculation basically said that surge is for when you get a critical shield, and when you critically shield an attack, whatever your
Oh my
absorb
God.
is. Say, yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea what you're saying right now.
So here's the way it
I
works.
do, though. Go ahead.
Here's the way it works.
I
Because
actually
as a
understand
tank, you
this.
should be doing nothing but stack crit and surge. And so an attack comes in and you critically shield it, and say you have 25% absorb, because why would you want to stack any more than that?
Of course.
And so the attack comes in for 100,000 damage, and so you shield it. You have a critical shield. You absorb 25% of it, but because it critted, not only did you absorb the 25,000 of the 100,000, you have 80% surge, because you should stack surge to the point of retardedness through diminishing returns. And so that 80% surge makes up for the remaining 75% of the damage that you didn't absorb, and it absorbs the rest of that. And you have a leftover 5% that you then get healed for.
What's
And
the
that-
mathematical breaking point on retardedness? Do we know?
The answer is yes.
I believe it involves using imaginary numbers.
Okay.
It's whatever number you come up with and the square root of -1.
Right. All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the live show, which we will, I guess we can call the ending segment that won't be part of the recorded copy, so only for you live listeners, Albie's Nonsense. Again, as always, thank everyone who's listened, and, well, as has already been stated, that's it.